Coaching in Session,
your exclusive destination for unparalleled personal and professional growth.
With your host, Michael Rearden.
Whether you choose to live within limits or break free, your mindset journey begins here.
Welcome, Devan Gonzalez, to Coaching in Session. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me.
Of course. Today, we're going to be talking about your work and how you help people with their limiting beliefs, building resilience, and creating a meaningful growth in their life. And all of this is essentially a mindset shift. Now, when I look at the idea of like a person, changing their mind, it has to be something that either they're pushed to or they're willingly or wanting to make this change in their life. If you are a son of a mother who's telling you to get off your butt and stop playing video games, or a son of a father saying go mow the lawn or make something out of your life, you're not going to do it just because someone else is telling you to do it. You have to want that. And so there is a story behind the mindset when someone is vying for greatness. And so we're going to be getting into that conversation in just a moment. But if you could, tell the world who you are, what you do, and how you help.
Yeah, definitely. So my name is Devan Gonzalez, and essentially I started a gym, a boot camp, style fitness concept. And that stemmed from my decade and a half of personal training. But with our gym concept, constantly helping members, not just with their fitness, but with their mindset, with their nutrition, all encompassing. And even when they come in to sign up for a membership, like you could tell if someone is pushing them, they're not going to want to be here. They're not going to get the results because they're going to have basically 1 foot in, 1 foot out. So realizing, and asking them, why did they come? Like, what is their reason why? What is their purpose, right? And finding out what that is and then exploring that with them together. But we launched a gym. Now we have a franchise. We're in a few different states. But my biggest goal and my biggest, core value, I would say, is to have a positive impact on as many lives as I can, while I can. And for me, I believe everything begins and ends with mindset. So the moment you believe something is possible, it is. The moment you stop believing it's achievable, then it is.
Mm-hmm. Very true. They say, or Napoleon Hill says, if you believe it, you can achieve it, right? So it's the same thing with people seeing something that's almost impossible, seemingly impossible, until someone does it. And then they're like, I guess it is possible. And then you'll start to see people just kind of doing it after that. We can look at the inceptions of anything great, big companies where, maybe looking all the way back to Walmart. Walmart won't be successful. And then boom, look at it today, right? So it's like, okay, now Amazon, et cetera. So it's going to be more companies to come. It's not going to stop just there at Walmart or Amazon or maybe, just any store or any platform, right? We have Instagram, we have Facebook. There's always going to be a new kid on the block. And so sometimes people, they see all of these wonderful things in life and in the world. They say, well, everything is already created. Everything is already done. There's no more wiggle room for greatness or success, because they might feel as if success is circumstanced or is capped. And so when we look at success, or when we look at someone's potential as being limited in their own mind, how can we begin to get them to think more in the possibility realm?
I would say, most people limit themselves in kind of what you're saying is, everything's already created, everything has already been achieved, but realize Uber wasn't a thing, and people said it couldn't be done because we had taxis. And now, when's the last time you've called a taxi, right? And so realize that your limiting beliefs are that alone. They're in your head. If your limiting beliefs are stemming from someone else, then you need to also realize that vision, that goal was put in your mind for a reason. It wasn't put into their mind. So it might seem unrealistic to them, but that's just because they don't see the vision. That wasn't placed in their mind, right? So you have to realize why is your purpose? What is this going to do for your life and the life of others if you achieve this? On the flip side of that coin, what would this do to your life if you didn't achieve it, right? And if that reason why is strong and you do have a true purpose for it, you can achieve anything, because there's going to be ups, there's going to be downs in any journey in life. And you have to be willing to weather the storm when you're on that down phase and understand that it's not going to be a down phase forever. That just means there's going to be a bigger bounce back and a greater bounce back. There's a skill or there's a lesson that needs to be learned so that you can grow and scale further.
Very true. Talking about Uber, when Uber first came out, people were like, who in the world is going to get in a stranger's car? And so, there was that whole controversy there. And then, fast forward to today, when's the last time, as you said, that took a taxi? I had to take a taxi with a client. We were at the airport and it was damn near triple of what Uber would cost. And I'm like, this is insane. So eventually it's going to be a dying breed unless people just want to, get from their thing and they don't have a car because they didn't plan for it. But I mean, so many people are walking from the terminal to the area where there's pickups now. It's not just they can come pick you up in the lane. It's like a separate areas in most airports now. And so you are going to be already planning for it. And in life, we have to plan for that too, because we can, always get behind the trade. If we think of like trades and things like that, for example, Bitcoin or Nivea or Zoom or, like any big stock, Amazon, Disney, people might say, these are good growth stocks. Yes. And you will make some money. But then I think people are also thinking in the mind of, I should have got in when it's, at the start, I should have been an initial investor. It's what happened with Tesla. Like people can buy in for, $200,000. And if they did that, just the initial investment, they'll be, it's like what, 20 to 50 million, depending, so it's like you could have did a lot with your money then, right? But a lot of people, they wait until they say, look at this, this is great. And I think that happens a lot with themselves too. Like they don't realize their greatness. And, we can look at, just physical fitness as the example, right? People look in the mirror and they just quietly accept themselves. They're like, hey, this is who I am. I'm 40, I'm 50, whatever, going down the line. But then if they do, right? If they do go on that fitness journey and then they start to look in the mirror and they start to see some changes, they're like, whoa, I didn't know this person was there. And so there is greatness beneath things. And sometimes people, they wait until a bad moment or something to happen in life rather than taking initiative today. And so when a person is trying to make some changes in their life, I wish it was as easy as a New Year's resolution where they would stay committed for the whole year, but we know that's not true. So how and what would be the best solution for a person to say, if I want to create lasting change in my life, what would be my first steps?
I think the first thing you need to think about and realize is, are you doing it for a New Year's resolution? Are you doing it because it's a fad? Are you, like, becoming an entrepreneur is one of those things where it's glorified, but it's not meant for everyone, right? Being a fitness influencer isn't meant for everyone, right? And so you need to find what you truly want, right? Because if it's been, let's say, tying it into New Year's resolutions, if you've had the same New Year's resolution for more than 1 year, it's probably not that important to you, or you haven't fully committed to it, right? And so you need to realize that when you're going to commit to something, you have to be all in. There is no half in, half out on a lot of things, right? And sometimes that limiting belief of it didn't work in the past, so it's never going to work in the future, kind of stunts us. And you need to reshift and reframe your mindset to be like, it didn't work when I did it this way. That was a lesson learned. Now I know it didn't work that way. I'm going to try this way, right? Because if you keep trying the same way, obviously it's probably not going to work because it's proven to be not a way for you, right? So that door didn't open, so go to the next door or find a window, right? And so I think that that's the biggest thing is sometimes we look for external motivation to get started. New Year's resolution, everyone's about it, and it's this big thing. You feel hyped up because you're part of the wave. But then when that external motivation wears off, you don't have any internal motivation. And for me, my biggest thing is discipline over motivation, because I feel that discipline is a skill and motivation is something that comes and goes. It's like drinking a cup of coffee. The caffeine comes in, you're super, energetic for a couple hours, and then, man, I need another cup of coffee. Same thing for motivation. You need to know that discipline is a skill and it's built through doing the things that you need to do, even when you don't feel like doing them.
Very true. Caffeine has no effect on me. I don't know why, but I could drink a coffee and go straight to sleep, or energy drink.
Same here.
And I understand why people drink coffee, right? Because it's almost like a ritual. And so they say in the morning, I'm starting my day, right? But you can look at monks. Monks don't drink coffee. They drink tea, right? So it's the same concept. And tea can't have caffeine unless you brew the leaves and you do it the right way. So basically, I think it's like 90% of the caffeine in tea leaves is released on the first brew. So like if you toss that and you just use it after, you have less caffeine. So either way, that's just a tangent. But you have been saying something that is resonating from the inception of our conversation, 1 foot in, 1 foot out, fully committing. All of these things are something now people have in their mind, but how do we do it? Like how do we fully commit? Like, what does that look like? Like for me, I understand what it is to do something hard and to do it anyway, right? Mike Tyson, he was on the Joe Rogan podcast a bit ago, and he said something in the lines of discipline and motivation, right? He goes, motivation is the S word. He goes, discipline, right? It's the key. He's like doing what you don't want to do or what you hate, but doing it like you love it. And so it was the mindset of, you don't want to do something, maybe, right? You don't want to go for a walk. You don't want to eat healthy. But when you do it, you just do it because you say, I love this because it's going to give me something great. So it's a mindset shift now, because we're telling our mind something different than the norm of what it would be. Because if we think about running on a treadmill for an hour, how many people in the world will say, I don't want to do that. That sounds like it sucks. Versus, hey, let's go on vacation and sit on the beach and drink pina coladas, right? That sounds more enticing to the mind, because the mind will play tricks on you. The mind is outdated in the terms of evolution. The mind loves to conserve energy. It loves to, keep you safe. But we have gone, far from our prehistoric times. We don't have to worry about our safety or our security or where we're going to get food from. All of this is plentiful for us, and many people are not adapting to the new world of having food at every corner. And we could look at the studies or statistics of fast food spots that have opened up, near colleges that had no places of fast food, and then all the kids are getting fat. So they look at the different options now, right? I can get something fast, or I can do it the old school way, go to the store, cook my own food. So, there's a mindset to, be said that the world is not helping people be successful, right? There's so many obstacles, from our Dairy Queens to our Burger Kings to our McDonald's, and they have all of these delicious pictures, and we're like, whoa, like look at this, and I'm hungry. People who are hungry, they don't give themselves like an opportunity to feel that hunger. And that same thing affects the mindset too, if we look at it, because now they're not hungry for change. They're not hungry for, advancement. It's because they're getting everything satiated so quickly. So we're living in a world or a mindset now that, everything is quick. Everything is instant. And so if it's not quick, if it's not instant, why bother? And this is the idea for success, because success, especially for an entrepreneur starting a business, it takes so much time for things to build. Many people, they see the wins, as we were saying, with the stocks and everything, but they don't see all the long nights, all the losses, all the hardships. They only see what is the goal, what is the peak. And so how can we start to help people look at the journey of the hardships, the struggles, all the obstacles, and say, okay, this is my journey. I'm going to be taking those steps, and I don't mind what comes my way.
I would say I agree with everything that you just said, because even being in the fitness industry, like, people want everything now, and it's like, you didn't build that body overnight, right? And so your results also aren't going to come overnight. But people see the tip of the iceberg. They don't see the 90% that was under the water that, resulted in that little piece sticking out. And so, kind of rewinding to what I was saying about, half in, half out, it's meaning that if you're going to do something, do it with your full intention. Be fully purposeful when you're doing something. Otherwise, why do it at all? Because the one thing in this life that we don't get back is your time. And so you're doing yourself a disjustice by giving half your effort to something, because now you're wasting something in your time in doing it and just being like, oh, it's good enough. It is what it is, right? That's the one thing you're never going to get back. So why not? Even though you may not like it, it's going to get you the results. That's fine. And you want the results. You don't need to like the process. I mean, I'm a gym owner, personal trainer. I can tell you firsthand, I don't want to work out every single day, right? Most times I don't want to work out, but I know that I need to for the result. And so those days I show up, and the hardest part sometimes is just showing up, right? And then you get started, you do your first workout, and then you're like, your first exercise, and you're like, okay, that's not so bad. Let me just do another one. And then you start getting into the flow of it. So I would say you have to be intentional on anything and everything that you do. Otherwise, there's no real reason to do it. You're wasting your time. And if it involves others, it's not fair to them, because now you're stealing their time, right? And so I would say at first, be intentional. Secondly, don't set expectations for the result, meaning that a deadline. I'm going to have these results in a week, in a month. Like, if you're starting a business, right? You should set milestones and goals that you should strive towards. But when you set a hard date on it, it may not happen exactly as you planned out. And that's okay, as long as you progress towards that goal. Be flexible on the date if need be, because you don't know what you don't know. You can have the business plan written out. You could have a fitness plan written out. You don't know the things that are going to come in your path to hitting that milestone. But as long as you're on that path and you haven't strayed from it, if it takes you another week, if you're launching a business, it takes you another year to come out on the other side, what does it matter? Just because you didn't hit it when you thought you were going to hit it, you give up? Like, now you just wasted all that time you put into it.
Very true. I like this idea, of, and I'm going to use some different terminology here. Don't set dates or don't set deadlines, set milestones is the idea, right? The milestone marker is, if you're traveling in America, as the example, right? You have mile markers on, long highways, and you can't just say, I would love to just be where I want to be, like with a snap of my fingers. Now, this happens when I travel across the state. So I used to live in Connecticut. My family's still up there. And when I first moved to Texas, I had to drive all the way from Connecticut to Texas. It's 1,800 miles or something like that. It takes something around 21 hours if you don't stop. It would take me around 27 hours, right? I would barely sleep because I was just so focused on getting to my destination, right? And, when I stopped for a minute, right? I was like, let me enjoy this 27 hours of suck, because, the first 8 hours are easy, right? If you have people driving, it's even easier. But if you're driving for that first 8 hours, it feels good, right? It's like, okay, this is not too bad. And then you're like, this again. And eventually your butt starts to hurt. You get tired. It's not a good feeling. But then you can start to distract yourself. So I start to look at the different sceneries, because Connecticut has different landscapes than Tennessee, for example. And so when I'm going through those mountain ranges, I'm like, wow, look at this beauty. And so I'm just helping my mind look at what's the positive thing, rather than this suck, right? My butt hurts. I'm tired. I just want to lay in my bed. Like there are so many things that we would rather do, right? And I'm sure there's things that you would rather do than maybe going to work a 9 to 5, or maybe going to the gym after work or before work, or waking up early to make the kids lunches. I'm sure there's things that you would rather delegate to someone else, maybe, right? Well, when it comes to yourself, your greatness, your success, you can't delegate that. You have to be the proponent for, like who you're going to become. And it's easy for the mind to say, hey, like, I don't want to go to the gym today. I don't want to send the emails today. I don't want to make the calls to my clients today, because maybe you're burning out. Maybe you're tired. Maybe there's no fulfillment or joy in what you're doing. So then you're just trying to give, your mind a opportunity to say, okay, well, let's escape. And there's a thing with the mind. If you do something you don't like to do, eventually you start to build a resilience to that negative stimulus the mind is giving you. For example, if you're on the treadmill and you're running and your mind is telling you to stop, you fool, you're going to have a heart attack, and you don't stop, guess what the mind and the body's going to do? They're going to say, this son of a bitch is crazy. They're going to, eventually the mind and the body are going to start to work together and say, okay, well, he wants to run this amount of miles and this amount of time, and we're going to make sure he can do it, right? So it's just a shift, because we are living, again, in a very sedate type of lifestyle, right? Everything can be given to us, right? We have our Amazon with our free day, like free same day shipping. We have our DoorDash and our Uber Eats. And so there's a lot of immobility happening, and we can even see it with our youth happening today. So we have our Zoom meetings and things like that. The parks are empty. If you go to the parks, I'm sure there's more kids in a neighborhood than, the 1 or 2 kids you see at the park. But then we can just see that is the culture now, the culture, the community, what's happening in the world. So people, they get their Game Boys or their Nintendo Switches or their PlayStations or their Xbox. And I'm not saying that you can't enjoy these things, right? They're lavish things, right? It's like eating a good meal, but in moderation, right? So you figure out what you need to do. And so the question now is, how can people manage their schedule? How can people manage their time? How can people understand where they should be focusing their time rather than just allowing their time to kind of be usurped by their TikToks or their YouTube shorts or, just the TV and Netflix? And, it's easy to get distracted. So how can we remain focused?
So I would say there's two parts to this. There's the beginner level, right? And then the more advanced level. At first, I would say plan your day ahead of time, meaning that the night before, plan everything to the hour, what you're planning to do, right? Whether it's a workout, whether it's, a meeting with your team, or, you're going to be doing this project at work, plan it out, right? And so now at each hour of the day what you should be doing. And just like if you had a meeting with your boss, treat every meeting or every hour like that. You have to work out right now, treat it just as important as you had to attend a meeting with your boss, right? And that's the first way to do it. Now, if you want to take this more seriously, this is not something that necessarily you have to do every single day, but for a week, right? Time block, right? Set a timer essentially for every 15 on your phone or a little kitchen timer, whatever the case may be. And every 15 minutes that timer goes off, write down what you're doing. And it could be 1 or 2 words, doesn't need to be a long explanation. And that will be the most productive week you've had in a few years, because the first day you're going to catch yourself scrolling and all of a sudden the timer goes off and you're like, oh man, I was scrolling on TikTok, and then, a couple hours you have good notes, and then all of a sudden, boom, TikTok again. You're like, dang. And so all of a sudden you start becoming more intentional and you realize that you're getting more done faster than you would every other day, because you don't have to want to write down something that isn't working towards what you're trying to achieve, right? And so when you start to do that, you also learn, if you are a boss or a manager, what are you spending your time on that can be delegated, right? If you're working, in a professional setting, you could see if you're kind of just doing the same thing and kind of just repetitive motion and not really trying to go above and beyond and get extra tasks done, which lead you to working on the weekend sometimes, right? And so that time blocking is crucial. It is tedious, don't get me wrong, but at the same time, that will pay off for the long run. You do it for a week, all of a sudden you start to build up a habit for the following week. All of a sudden you catch yourself scrolling again, time block again for a day or two, right? It kind of recenters you on being productive. But at very minimum, schedule the day before, because if you try to do everything on the fly, I mean, how many times have you woken up and like, man, where should I start? What should I start working on now? I have 10 things to do. I don't know what I need to start with. And I always say start with the hardest thing, because that's usually the thing that's going to move the needle the most, right? There's a book called Eat the Frog. And it's basically do the hardest thing first versus procrastinating that later in the day, because usually that will be the one thing, the biggest thing that we push to the next day and the next day and so forth, right? Do the hard thing first. That win is huge and creates, internal motivation for the rest of the day. And then you do the smaller tasks that can get done in rapid fire, especially if you're time blocking.
Mm-hmm. Very true. This is a great book too. I think of like social media. I don't like social media, but it's so viable for a business. It just consumes so much time. So I delegate that, right? But for me, it's just like if I'm doing it, I just feel my soul draining away. It's like, oh my God. It's like, and then I get burned out, and then I'm wondering why I'm even doing this. But then I was like, wait, I could just do the things I love, right? So I can, do the coaching and meeting people. Like, I like that. But then I look at the ideas of my personal life too, not just business, because I believe there has to be, some level of connection, right? So you have your business life and you have your personal family life, right? And sometimes people, they have a hard time discerning between the two, right? Because they think, especially for men, they say, if I'm working all of these hours, I'm doing it for my family, so that should account for family time. And maybe your kids want to play with you, your wife wants some time or something along those lines. And so the family begins to suffer. And so when that starts to happen, there starts to have some problems starting to come up, right? There's no harmony. So you're coming home, there's no peace. And so now we are being less focused because we have new sets of problems that we think shouldn't even be there, because we are being the providers or the protectors. And, this is more for men, but it can also be for women too. Like if they're working, single moms, for example, and they're doing everything for their kids, and their kids are not being studious in schools or whatever it be, it could be a cry for attention. But when people have these different types of life circumstances and, one of the constraints they have is time because maybe they do have to work or maybe they, don't know how to balance things properly, like family time and work time, where would someone begin to, get this idea that, if I want to do something or make some change in my life, I have to manage my time better?
So I think like the biggest thing especially with entrepreneurs or professionals that are in that work setting where maybe you have a salary job that doesn't have a 9 to 5 and sometimes you'd have to work late and so forth or on the weekends, is that's okay. I hate when people talk about, you need to have work-life balance. Like that's not a real thing, because when you associate balance into work-life, kind of situations, people think 50-50. That's not how the life works. Your balance needs to be your balance, but also that means that there's a separation. They're not the same thing, right? Otherwise, it'd just be work life, right? And so for me, I have a 3-year-old daughter and I have one on the way, right? So it's like, it's very important that I spend time with them. And I also have my business. I have a nationwide franchise, system that I'm dealing with too. But when I'm with my family, I'm with my family. Like I have hours in the day that I do not answer my phone. The business could be burning down. The team, you guys deal with it as much as you can. I could fix the problems tomorrow or after they go to bed. Is most of the time, even for myself, if I need to finish a project, once my wife goes to bed, because my daughter goes to bed first, then my wife, and so once she goes to bed, if I need to finish something, I'll finish it after I've spent my time with them, right? But then there are those seasons that you may need to work a little bit longer, or I have to travel. And I communicate that with my wife, that we're on the same page. She understands that those seasons do come, but if you think that you're building this for them and they should just know that, that's not how it works. Especially if you have young kids, they don't care what you're doing at work. They don't understand that. All they want is your time, right? Whether it's 5 minutes, whether it's 5 hours, they just want you. And if you're there on your phone, you're not really there. And that goes back to what we were talking about before about being intentional, right? So if you're doing quality time with your wife, with your kids, then do it 100%. There is no half in, half out. The moment you start answering your phone is the moment that your kid is now being ignored, and they know that, right? So it's like they just want to spend some quality time with you because they've been waiting all day to see you, right? Even if it is just for an hour. So realize that, and I know that it's hard, especially as an entrepreneur, because believe me, I've made the mistakes, and it's always a work in progress. You have to realize that yes, your work doesn't ever stop, right? You're trading a 9 to 5 for 24/7, right? But at the same time, you need to create that boundary, or else what you think you're building for them, you'll lose them in the process.
Have you ever seen the keynote speech of, it was like a Navy or Army general? I think it was Navy. He did a keynote speech for a college, and the first thing he said was, like, if you want to change the world, make your bed in the morning.
I've heard that phrase, but I didn't see that keynote. No.
Yeah. So basically, he just begins off of that, and you can watch the whole keynote, but that just that first line, right, is so powerful, right? Just make your bed in the morning. And I remember, 2017. 2016, I moved to Austin, and like my whole life was a mess. 2017, 16, 17, and I basically had to build from scratch, right, from nothing, and it was extremely challenging for me because I literally left my foundation, my parents, everything, to come to a new state with nothing, no one. And I was like, all right, I'm going to build. I'm going to figure this out. And one of the things I did was I said, I'm going to do things different, right? I'm just going to do things in small increments because I know that, taking a big leap right now, like my mind just is not seeing it possible. So I said, I'm going to make my bed in the morning. And I started making my bed. And I said, I'm going to start reading books. I started reading books. And I said, I'm going to start, going to the gym at 4 o'clock in the morning. I started going to the gym at 4 o'clock in the morning. And then everything just started to fit in like perfectly. Now people are seeing like, hey, how are you doing this? And for me, it was, difficult to see because I didn't see it as, oh yeah, this is the secret. Like this is the magic. It was all the small incremental steps. It was making my bed in the morning. It was getting up early. It was looking at my diet and portioning my meals and buying a scale. And I mean, I did all of these little things that, someone might buy the scale, they might, get a gym membership, and they think that just because they did those things, everything will magically happen. And so I tell people, like, if you really want to change your life, so it's very similar to the concept. Start so simple, stupid, right? So small. Like, what is something you cannot not do, right? Can you not wake up in the morning and not brush your teeth, right? And just say that's part of your day, right? That's part of your routine, right? And so you say, okay, I'm going to get up, I'm going to take a shower next, right? Because maybe you weren't taking showers in the morning, right? Whatever, right? You could be a nighttime shower. It doesn't matter. But you start to do something with intent, rather than just kind of saying, oh, yeah, this is what I do. Because most people, they wake up, they hit the snooze button a couple of times, and then they're like, oh, my goodness, I have to go to the bathroom, get in the car. Oh, my goodness. And so they're so frantic. But if you just say, okay, well, I know what I'm going to do, rather than, let's see what happens, the mind, changes so quickly when you say, this is what we're going to do, right? You're the boss. You literally, you are the boss of yourself. But yet we allow our cravings to take over. We allow our lesser selves to take over all the time, right? Oh, I don't feel like going to the gym. Oh, I got a sugar craving. I got to go eat some cake or ice cream or whatever. And you are in control of your mind. You are literally the boss, right? And your mind is going to do exactly what you want it to do, but you have to train it. And so, if you go to the gym the first day, right? Maybe you're a scrawny guy or something, right? So you might not pick up the 40-pound dumbbells and start curling those, right? You might start with a 5 or something along those lines, maybe even 2.5. And you start there, right? And you build and you're consistent. And every single day you make some level of progress to your personal, levels of fitness. But then it's the same thing with your family, right? You spend a little bit more time communicating with them, right? Talking to your wife, sitting down, maybe scheduling date nights every week, or if you can't afford every single week, maybe like every other week or something like that, right? But you're intentional, right? And when you can create that intent, then things start to change. And so when we start to give ourselves this idea of intent, right? We can tie it with our values, our values of being healthy, our values of being a family person, and then all of this put together is going to help us one day create the mindset that's going to propel us to something better. But it's not as easy as saying, I'm going to get a piece of paper, I'm going to get a timer, I'm going to do it, because there's going to be something that gets in someone's way that's going to stop them. Something is going to happen in their life. There's a car accident. There's a fire. There's something that's always going to happen. And so we have to help our mind, in a sense, say, no matter what happens, this outside stimulus, I know what I'm going to do. Is there a method, or is there a way that you have found that has worked best for you or your clients to say, hey, it doesn't matter if the world's burning. I know what I'm going to do.
Before I give that answer to what you're saying, I want to add this one piece. I heard, I was at an event and the guest was talking about, essentially, most people buy a gym membership, like you're saying, or buy a book, and they think that's the investment, right? The real investment is reading the 100 pages that you just bought. The real investment is your time every day that you're at the gym. That's the investment to the result. The first one is just the cost, so that you can have the opportunity to have the investment, right? So you got to shift your perspective to, you're buying an investment to be able to invest in to get the result, right? The other thing is, for what I tell clients, and even I would say even or more importantly, like my team or my family, is I don't accept excuses, right? And the reason I say that is because I accept mistakes. I accept things not working out, you messing up, right? That is a learning lesson, in my opinion. But if you make an excuse around that mistake of why it happened, you haven't taken responsibility for that mistake, which means it's going to happen again, right? So let's say you didn't go to the gym, and because there was traffic and this and that, it's like, you could have woken up earlier. You could have done your workout when you said you were going to do it, and not tell yourself you're going to do it later in the day, right? There's an answer to every excuse that you give. But if you're using an excuse instead of being like, I messed up, I should have gone when I had it in my schedule, or I should have gone at 4 a.m. like you're doing, right? That's going to work out better for my schedule. Once you stop making excuses and you just take responsibility, you start to realize that things start making a positive change, right? You start becoming more intentional on things, and it doesn't need to be crazy. Like you said, you made your bed, and then you started going to the gym, and then you started reading, then you started going to the gym, right? It's the incremental progress that makes lasting change. When we put up people on nutritional plans and stuff, it's not, hey, you're eating out every single meal, now you're going to eat chicken and rice for every single meal. We both know that's not going to work out. But it's like, okay, this is what you're currently doing. What's the first thing that we can change so that, we can make a micro step? And then let's do that for a week, right? Then the next week, let's take another micro step. And then all of a sudden, a month later, you're like, wow, I didn't even realize that, I was doing all that stuff. I'm starting to see results. And it's those micro things that start to compound into lasting change. But that lasting change is the habit that you've built up from doing those small things on a repetitive basis, right? But if you try to put an abrupt stop in something and go a different way, our bodies try to recenter us, and our mind tries to recenter us on what it has already created a habit for. Right? But main thing for me is don't make excuses for yourself. If you wouldn't accept excuses from someone else, why would you accept it from yourself?
And we can't allow our excuses to reign supreme, right? I'm on the same boat with you. Like, I don't allow, people just to make excuse of why you're late, or something along those lines. Like, look at what happened, right? Own it, right? Be accountable for it. But then we also look at the other side. It's like, okay, how can we make sure this doesn't happen again, right? So we're figuring out solutions. And typically, if you figure out a solution together, especially if you're a parent, I was a teacher for many years. And one of the things that is most effective is when someone makes that mistake, right? And they might begin to make an excuse. You say, well, let's just figure out how we can make sure this doesn't happen again, right? So now we're figuring out the solution. So the solution is so important. But in order to get that, we have to figure out, our own things. And it's so important that we do the work. And one of the best ways to figure that out is to, get someone in your corner, a coach, a mentor, a guide, a trainer, someone that can look at your blind spots. And we all have them. That's why mentorship is so powerful in our world today, because people will go to school for 8 to 12 years or whatever it is. And by the time they're coming out of school, they're not ready for the real world. And so there's a huge shift in getting mentors and getting coaches and getting people that are going to help assist you on that journey of life, because it is tough by yourself. And you don't need 100 people, in your corner, right? You just need a select few of people that you can be confident in and trust. And once you can create that circle, things start to move in a more positive way for you and your mind, because you have people that you can say, hey, I can rely on this person. This person has my back. This person's going to tell me when I'm BSing. And it's so important to have those people in your life. You don't want people in your life that are always going to sugarcoat everything. And I know we live in a society where that is promoted. And I'm telling you to find the people who are going to make it so real and maybe urgent for you to start to step into the life that you can. And we do it one step at a time. And so this is the time when, Devan, if you have any final words, if you have any messages or anything you would like to, leave the audience with, this will be the time. And then, of course, please tell everyone where they can find you.
Yeah, definitely. So the message I like to leave everyone with everything that we talked about is, if you have a dream and you have a goal, right? You have a vision for yourself and it hasn't worked out, you're not special. Right? You're not special for that dream, that goal, that vision to work out for other people and not work out for you. You just need to keep putting the work in, put the time in. It's not a matter of if, it's just a matter of when, right? You have to trust the process. You have to, find the additional resources, additional tools, whatever it may be, but you can always come out on the other side if you're willing to put in the work. So just remember, at the end of the day, you're not special. And then if you want to connect with me, the best place to connect with me essentially is on Instagram.
Perfect. And I'll help everyone. You don't have to worry about the spelling. Just check out right down below. You can easily just click the links and get to the website, the social medias, it'll all be there for you. So find the platform that you love, and then to, begin the conversation with someone, right? And I always tell people when, it's okay to inquire, right? Like there's no harm in reaching out to someone and it's not a good fit, or reaching out to someone and just, checking things out, like testing the waters. There's just two schools of thought here, right? You can be a person that, takes that one step at a time into the water and is terrible, or you could be the person that just jumps in cannonball head first, maybe. And then you're like, okay, this is shocking, but then you acclimate so much quicker. And then you look at the person who's struggling, taking that one step at a time, and you just have to figure out where your mind is, right? Are you that person who could be that daring individual that can just jump in, or do you need to take those steps in and acclimate as you go? It can be a longer process, but you have to figure out what's going to work for you long term. And so that's the whole idea, right? Coaching is not about cookie cutter programs and everything is going to work for everyone if you just do this, these amount of steps, because you as an individual are going to require something different, right? If you have been trying something and it has not been successful, it doesn't mean that it wasn't meant for you, right? You just have to keep on figuring out what is, your niche, or what is your it, or what is your way, because not everyone in life is going to have the same journey. You can look at the same picture and someone can see the sky and someone can see the grass. And so in life, you get to see the grass to be greener on your side or on someone else's side. And if it's greener on the other person's side, you just have to water yours. And so that is putting in the effort, putting in the consistent mindset that things can change, and they will if you want. So I do want to thank you, Devan, for coming on, spending some time, and of course, talking about your work today.
Thank you so much for having me. It was awesome.